Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Countryman Podcast. I am here today with not Andrew Isker, but the other Paul. We're waiting for Andrew. He's allegedly coming, but I needed to dispel rumors that it was my fault. The stream was late, but it's not true. It's Andrew's fault. And, maybe he'll show up, maybe he won't. But we asked Paul on to talk about a video because last week or I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we started interacting with Michael Bird's new book on, I don't even remember. It's like on political theology, basically. And he's just trying to critique the idea of, Christian nationalism or a Christian nation, all those kinds of things. But since that time, he came out with a YouTube video. And so it makes it very relevant to what we're doing. But we thought the video is worth going through. And Andrew has the video and knows how to integrate it. So we're waiting for him to upload it. But I guess we're just going to take a couple minutes and just take pot shots at Isker while we wait for him. So, Paul, how you doing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There you go. There's the Australian. That's the only words he knows.
Yeah.
Oh,
there
man.
He is.
Party is over.
Oh, what were you saying about me?
Party is over.
We're just saying how in my Christian nationalist utopia, your head's on the block.
Oh. Oh, yeah, I deserve it, man. I deserve it. Oh, Dylan sent us $4.99. Well, thank you, Dylan.
Lovely.
Yeah, it would have been $10.99 if you were here on time.
Well, all right, you'll take it out of my Greco gum stock.
Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and get that video all prepped? But
okay.
While you're doing that, I'll have Paul set it up for us. Why did you want to talk about this, Paul?
Okay, I want to talk about this because it was quite literally right after we did that first stream reacting to Dr. Michael Bird and N.T. Wright's new book, Jesus and the Powers, their let's be real, their attempt at political theology. And right after we react to it, I see that, even well before that, he had already done a debate with Stephen Wolfe. He actually had already debated Stephen Wolfe on the Unbelievable podcast. So that happened a while ago. And then the book came out. Then we reviewed it. But more recently, right after we did the review, he actually released a dedicated 50-minute video critique of Stephen Wolfe's case for Christian nationalism. So I saw that. My jaw dropped at the wonderful opportunity. And I watched through the video, the whole thing myself, and it was even more unhinged than I was expecting. It is pure gold. It was something beautiful, and so I immediately thought to inform you gentlemen about it. And Andrew was like, "Oh boy, we got to react to this." But I hear that's a great thing, by the way, that both of you are doing a fresh reaction with this. So you haven't seen it yet, and I can guarantee you, boys, right now you're going to lose it. It's good. It's good.
Excellent. Let me pull up the full thing. Okay.
Now, the whole thing's 50 minutes. So are you wanting to just do like select portions or?
Oh, no, let's go through it, but I will.
Okay.
Does he talk fast?
Is there a certain clip of it that we should start with? Or just jump in the middle.
Well, if you want, he doesn't really talk that fast, no. So you could like do a times 2 speed.
We'll speed it up. All right, yeah. Here we go.
That's a good thing with Dr. Michael Bird. He's a moderately paced, well spoken, and all that.
There he is.
There's the man. There's the peak of Aryan aesthetics.
Okay.
I love you, Doc. I've given you. Hey, look, Doc. If you're watching, I've given you crap before, and I admit I was a bit too harsh in the past, but it's all in good jest. And,
yes, yeah. We're having fun here. All right. Well, I guess without further ado, let's launch into it.
This initial bit up to let me look at the video myself. The initial bit up to the 10-minute mark is basically where he introduces the video and he states where he agrees with Dr. Wolfe.
Yeah,
so
what Wolfe gets right. Yeah. So let's see what he.
Should we skip that a little bit?
I don't know. I kind of want to see what he agrees with.
Yeah.
So, let's go. Let's see. Let me know if you can hear it. Otherwise, this is a disaster.
Imagine for a moment if your country was ruled by Oliver Cromwell, with the racial policies of apartheid South Africa in the 1970s, where Methodist preachers are arrested and tried for heresy, where Presbyterian ruling elders roam the streets to inspect women's attire for proprietary, where armed guards are posted at the exits of churches on Sunday to prevent anyone in the congregation from leaving before the final benediction. You know, a place where the only restaurants permitted are Chick-fil-A and Famous Dave's barbecue. If you can imagine that, then you can imagine the world that Stephen Wolfe would like to create in his book, The Case for Christianity.
What? Okay.
Let's hold up there.
All right.
Dr. Bird, I'm already a Christian nationalist. You don't have to resell it to me.
Oh, yeah. Only Chick-fil-A, I guess. Sorry, Dr. Bird. We're going to ban Chick-fil-A too because they use seed oils. So you already got that wrong.
Christian nationalism. That's kind of what the book argues for. It's not simply arguing for a close relationship between church and state. It's arguing for a type of Christianity that is above all in place to focus on the hegemony of white people. So it is a version of white Christian nationalism, and I regard it as both deviant, heretical, and pernicious in the extreme. And people might say, well, Mike, you know,
wait. I gotta pause it right there. Where does he get that from? Right?
Yeah, I didn't. Did he get a page number on that?
Yeah, need source, please.
Source.
If the book is really that bad, why bother reviewing it or responding to it? I mean, you're just gonna you know, keep feeding the frenzy about Christian nationalism and give him more airtime than this book deserves. Well, I'm doing a critique, a lengthy and concerted critique, for a few reasons. Okay, first of all, according to YouTube, Wolfe's videos where he talks about the book, where he advocates the case for Christian nationalism, these videos get on average between 20 to 45,000 views at a time. So this is garnering a bit of attention, both in America and around the world. He is advocating the case for a particular type of white Protestant nationalism, and I think this is infecting people, and people may be influenced by this. I think it is important to put out a thoughtful critique out there as a kind of response to his version or his variety of Christian nationalism. The second thing we've got to remember is that Christian nationalism is a threat to liberal democracy, okay? It's a threat.
Whoa! Oh, no!
Yep.
Sound the alarm.
To Orthodox
his presuppositions shine through.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, go.
Sound the alarm.
Threat to evangelical Christianity, both in America and in other parts of the world. Christian nationalism is not just limited to the United States. There are expressions of it in other parts of the world. Okay, so I think we do have to take this seriously, because there are people who want to implement this kind of a vision, which would require a very series of anti-democratic measures being put into place. And the third reason I want to offer my own critique is that, sadly, a number of journalists and commentators who critique Christian nationalism are, to be frank, historically and religiously illiterate. And sometimes you get the impression that almost anyone who...
All right, he's right there. He's correct about that.
Well, yeah, but let's talk about illiteracy. I mean, this entire thing is framed as, liberal democracy versus white nationalism. It's goofy at the start. Like, is it even worth our time?
Yeah, we'll find out. It is.
Yeah, it gets even better, boys. Trust me.
Okay, good. All right.
Who is Christian and politically conservative gets counted as a Christian nationalism. Now that's not the case. Okay, just because you're conservative and a Christian, that does not a Christian nationalist make. So if we're going to do a critique, we've got to do it.
Mm-hmm. Not anymore. Yeah. Not anymore. What was it that TV interview in America where that woman basically called socially conservative Christians Christian nationalists, and
if you believe your rights come from God, you're a Christian nationalist.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah,
that's an FDR view, though. I mean, that's just a standard libertarian, like a liberal view. That's not even close to Christian nationalism.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, intellectually, of course, yes, there's a distinction between Christian nationalism and all that jazz, but in the social paradigm, we're all being lumped in as Christian nationalists. So that's actually going to become untenable soon enough.
Well, yeah, Michael Bird is a Christian nationalist because he has to believe in rights. I mean, he's a liberal Democrat, and he's believes that these things come from God. They're sanctioned by the Bible. Yeah. So he's a Christian nationalist too. So that's
one of us, buddy.
Sorry, Dr. Bird. It's the truth. All right, let's let him keep going.
From someone and for people who need to learn what Christian nationalism really is, rather than just saying, hey, that guy has got a Bible on his desk, he must be a Christian nationalist. No, we need a real thoughtful critique of Christian nationalism in order to wear off what I think are its dangerous impulses and its very real threat to Western democracies. It's also a threat to, I think, Christian witness in those democracies. So that's what I'm going to be about in this video. And I have to warn you, this is going to be a long video. So I think we're going to have to hunker down for a good 40 or 50 minutes. But this is going to be long. But stay with me, because all of the critiques I have to make I think are very important. They expose real elements of the book and its vision for America and for Christianity, which I think you'll find alarming. But stay tuned, and you'll come across some scary stuff, and you'll see and understand why I'm offering this rather impassioned response that I'm making. So that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
However, the place for us to begin with is, surprisingly, somewhat of a sympathetic approach to what he's doing. I want to show that I'm doing a fair and honest critique. I'm not some ultra left-wing tree-hugging liberal from Yale who's just throwing rocks because some Christian wants to have a voice in politics. I want to show that I can really understand and appreciate the book and even affirm elements of the book. So I'm going to kick off with a few things in the book that I actually think are right, and then I'm going to go into the critique where I'll really bring the wrath and thunder. So this is what I like about the book. Let me explain what I like about it. Wolf is correct that it's okay. It's good, natural, and normal to love your people and your place. Okay. Wolf wants to be able to love the people in his street, in his suburb, in his church, county, state, and country without being made to feel like he's a rustic rube. Okay. Nobody should feel guilty because not all of their family and friends look like a picture perfect shop for a diversity, equity, and inclusion seminar. Okay, he just wants to love the people who are in his own hometown, even if a lot of them are like him. He wants to say it's okay to love your alma mater, to be patriotic, and to be devoted to your own family. Okay, and not everyone has to be a cosmopolitan. Not all of us live in a multicultural metropolis. It's okay to be a town in a person in a small town where 80% of the people are just like you. Okay, I can get that. I understand that. The second thing I would affirm about the book is that religion does have a place in the public square. Wolf opines and wants to resist an aggressive secularism that seeks to drive religion away from our civic discourse, and it wants to often deconstruct permanent fixtures of human existence like community, family, church, and the like. And I share that critique of a kind of progressive Orwellianism that aspires to replace the equality principle of our liberal democracies and replace that with a hierarchy of moral identities that divides everyone into the categories of the oppressor or the oppressed. I think our Christian heritage in Western societies is a good thing, and all things being equal, Christianity has been a force for immense good, and we should remember that. We should be proud of that heritage and resist those who seek to replace it either with a caliphate or with communism. So I'm on board with that kind of critique of the postmodern left. Third, I understand that Wolf is also responding to progressive elites with their condescending contempt for the white rural working class. Because I have a working class background myself, and I've always been a fan of books like Paul Embry's Despised, Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class, or in fact, two books on a similar theme have recently just come out in the US. There's Bada Unga Sargon's book, Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women, and also Rob Henderson's book, Troubled, where he talks about how luxury beliefs of the elites, which can confer status on the upper class while ruining the lives of the lower classes. So I'm up for that. I'm up.
I wonder if he's going to read Jeremy Carl's book. Right, Dr. Bird, if you're watching this, read Jeremy Carl's book and do a video on that. Right, and tell us the unprotected class.
Who's this for the plebs?
Yeah. If you really want to be edgy and prove your bona fides here and your sympathy, read that book and tell us what you think.
For a critique of the upper middle class progressives and their glaring contempt for the pieties and pastimes of the working class. Fourth, I'll also say, in Wolf's favor, there is a strand of Protestant tradition that seeks reform, not only of religion and morals, but of the state as well. So, for instance, Calvinism cannot be reduced to predestination or the banal abbreviation TULIP, as a theological system. Read Book 4 of Calvin's Institutes of the Christian Religion, which is basically a manual on how to run a Protestant city. I mean, even the Westminster Confession of Faith has sections on civil order for a Christian society. The Reformed tradition often imagined a city or a country governed by a synergy of councillors and clergy to keep the place authentically Christian. Wolf wants to recover that tradition and apply it afresh today, and his views are not completely out of sync with some aspects of the Reformed tradition. Fifth, I would also agree with Wolf against some Anabaptist perspectives that Christians can participate in and contribute to the political order. They can do that by voting, by serving in office, or working for the government. The vocation of public service is a way of contributing to the common good, a way to offer Christian witness, and I think God wants this world to be wisely governed. In that sense, we are recovering our Adamic vocation to be the stewards of creation, and we're exercising our Christian vocation to bring heavenly love and light to bear on earthly institutions. So those are the things that I think Wolf gets right, or I can agree and support. But on the whole, I regard his vision for Christianity in the world as...
All right. Now you have to really strap yourselves in, just even with this opening of what he finds wrong with Wolf.
Here we go.
Oh my word. He throws the words around. I'll tell you right now, you're gonna have a lot of fun with this.
All right, let's go. All right. Here we go.
As a grotesque perversion of Christianity. It's xenophobic, prone to violence. I mean, almost cartoonish in its aspirations to take
He's the expert on cartoonish. Let me tell you.
over America. Wolfe envisages a Caesaro-Papist state headed by a strongman Christian prince who rules through the apparatus of a Presbyterian Taliban, who I would imagine to be
Well, yeah.
Regulative principle of worship.
Let me ask you
CJ,
this.
do you have your Toyota Hilux ready to go?
I do. Yes. Let me finish my Greco gum here, and then I will go out and get it. Paul, are we gonna have to stop this every minute like this? This is insane.
Potentially. I'll let you be the judge of that. But
I mean,
yeah.
like, should we comment on the Taliban thing? I mean,
Let's do that. Yeah.
I mean,
we
one of the
should.
things that's just so bizarre, I think it comes from the fact that there have been so like longhoused might be a good phrase for those that don't know what I mean. Like they've been so saturated by the post-war consensus of political theory that anything that deviates that, you have to use really big, scary phraseology to describe it. So if someone's not a liberal Democrat like he is, you have to use words like Taliban and neo-Nazi because you don't know how to actually grapple with what Wolfe was putting forth, because what Wolfe is putting forth is actually basically just the political theology of the American founders, and also the political theology of of Rutherford, Samuel Rutherford, and a lot of the Presbyterians. This is not this new 21st century blueprint for this new society. Wolfe is very much trying to recover something that's deeply integrated in the way that we think about politics and theory and in the organization of social society. So he has to throw Taliban in there, though, because he actually has no historical category to grapple with things that deviate from the liberal democracy hegemony.
Yes, precisely.
Yep. Completely correct. And what's insane, really, and I don't think he really justifies it, he really explains himself in the rest of the video from memory, is how he's already admitted that Wolfe is basically just trying to recover what the reformers already did, like Book 4 of Calvin's Institutes, for example. Read many other authors like Voetius, for example. Don't look at his at his suggested civil policy towards the Jews. Oh dear. And there's any given political reform, any given reformers in the period and their polity, their political theology, and for crying out loud, pre-Reformation theology going all the way back to Constantine. Like there's no meaningful difference in that regard, except that maybe on certain details with Wolfe. So for Bird to be consistent, he has to call like the consensus of Christian civilization just a Europe-wide Christian Taliban. Does he really believe that?
Exactly.
Caesar a papist.
I don't think he can. I don't think he has the historical categories to really understand what's going on. I mean, he's either playing ignorant or he really is ignorant.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like on one side of his mouth, he could say, "I have sympathy for people that are from the working class who live in small communities that look mostly like them."
Yeah.
And then out of the other side of his mouth, xenophobes everywhere, xenophobia, and it's like,
yeah, exactly.
Well, dude, they're producing by force multiculturalism everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So if you oppose that in any sense, you, Michael Bird, are going to call that person a xenophobe. Period. So how can you say you have sympathy for that if that's what you're going to do? Right?
Notice his wording. He says, maybe it's deliberate. I'm not sure, or maybe it's just emergent from what he believes. He says it's okay to live in an 80% place that looks like you, like 80% white place, for example. He doesn't say it's okay for you to try to seek to keep that intact.
To preserve it. Yeah.
That's
you just have to be a passive subject of multicultural forces operating on you. Otherwise, you're a xenophobe. All right. Well, let's let him keep going. I mean, we could be here all day.
Oh, yeah. We will be.
Bald-bearded men with thick glasses who like cigars, submissive wives, heresy trials, and reading Protestant.
Oh, he's been talking Owen Strahan.
Thick-bearded, original Dutch. A fantasy world from the same sort of people who created the Geneva Commons Facebook group, if you know anything about.
Whoa! Oh no!
Oasis, not the Facebook Oasis.
Yeah. I was in that group actually. I was in that, and
you're Oasis, Andrew.
I guess apparently, like I mean they made that like page when they doxed everybody in there, and I showed up. I was tagged in two things, and one of them was commenting on like Jamar Tisby and those people, and all I said was, why does anybody take what these guys say at face value? right, and like they're operating in good faith, you need to treat them as enemies, right?
Andrew,
And I had never read Carl Schmitt at that point, but I
did.
understood it. Yeah,
This is the same kind of people who will tell you, "Shh, a black woman is speaking. Listen and learn."
that's right. Sit down and listen. That's right. No, it's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, even like the Geneva Commons things, all those guys were vindicated because look at what Amy Bird, no relation to Michael Bird, has become. Look at what Beth Moore has become. Look at all the things that they were critical of in that group and paid a hefty price. Many of those men that have way more courage than Michael Bird. Look what happened to them, and look how they were right, and you were wrong. So anyway, I'll let him bringing up the Geneva Commons. That's getting me going, man. I'm getting angry
about them. So there's a little bit of rhetoric in my description of Wolf's and his view of Christian nationalism, but only a little bit. I'm really riffing off what he says rather than imputing foreign notions to him. So let's get into the critique. When it comes to the critical response to Wolf, my biggest gripe is that Wolf complains that Christianity has become servile, effeminate, and powerless. He says that Christians take pleasure in their oppression, and Christianity is often used as a coping device for an action, even when under tyranny and slavery. It is a theological means to psychologically endure one's Gnostic unwillingness to struggle against earthly abuse. At its worst, theology is to be wielded to find pleasure in one's humiliation.
Fact check, true.
Yeah. Snopes fact checked completely true.
Fact check true. Oh, let's see what he has to say though about this.
Oh, you guys are gonna love this.
He's incensed that Christians have been excluded from public institutions. They've been forced to affirm the language of universal dignity, tolerance, human rights, anti-nationalism, anti-nativism, social justice, and equality. I mean, they've been forced to affirm things like justice and equality. I mean, it's
okay. Hold on. We're forced to use the pronouns, man. Like we're forced to pretend that gay marriage is real, right?
Yeah.
What are you talking? Yeah, we are. Oh, justice and equality. Get out of here, Michael Bird. Good grief. Ugh.
It's truly terrible for him. He protests that Christianity has been ousted from its Constantinian heights, been cast out of the public square, and it lacks the courage to seize the throne back. And it's being forced to tolerate people that he seems to regard as intolerable.
Well, yes, they are intolerable. Yes,
yeah.
They are.
Yeah,
Yes.
The entire structure of the way that Christianity is framed by the regime evangelicals, the regime adjacent church outlets is all about Christianity giving up its cultural hegemony for the third world, for left-wing revolutions, for sexual degeneracy, all the things that are the major priorities of the regime, not only in America, but the entire Western world at large, is seen as Christians are told that they need to apologize. They're given loads of guilt manipulation. It's like the politics of guilt at every level of Christian interaction with politics. And so yes, it's almost by definition, the meaning of the post-war consensus has been to repudiate the function that Christianity used to play in Western civilization. I don't know how you could argue differently. This is how third worldists and the Africanists and all of the new left in France and on the continent, this is exactly how they talk about Christianity. Yeah. So the idea that this is some sort of ridiculous notion by Stephen Wolf completely contradicts the themes in academia, contradicts the themes in entertainment. It contradicts the themes in the entire managerial apparatus in the United States and the Western world at large.
I mean, and look at like Harvard and Rufo and the things that he did, like getting the president fired, and like the whole department that woman came from, right, full of all these plagiarists and things like that. There are like dozens, hundreds of these professors in the Ivy Leagues where their job is to just do DEI stuff all day long to enforce the civil religion on the new elite that are being formed and shaped in these institutions. And you mean to tell me that's just justice and equality that they're doing? Just justice and equality. That's what that is, right? And this is what Stephen Wolf hates.
Mm-hmm. Get out of here. And obviously, yes, he says, they're forced to affirm equality. So we and Wolf would say, yes, these are fake, false principles. So yes, we agree with that characterization. But justice, him implying in that, and obviously he's having a little tongue in cheek. There's nothing wrong with that in principle. We're not naughty words. So we're not effeminate. We can take it. Cool, whatever. Good on you. Good on you, Mike, for the minimal pushback you do in that way. But to say, you're forced to affirm justice.
It's not justice.
This
Yeah.
well, this
It's
look
not.
at this.
A,
This
it's not
comment is,
justice. And
this
B,
comment is
Wolf
exactly right.
is, yeah, and B, Wolf is unbelievably clear. We believe in justice rightly defined. Like he clearly knows that if he's read the book.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Mhm.
He knows what he's doing here. Come on.
Yeah, yeah.
He knows. He knows.
In response to that, I want to point out that servile, effeminate, and powerless is what Christians were proudly known for. Remember this: to be crucified.
No. Nope. 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 No, they weren't. They willfully went to their deaths. Right? That's
Yeah.
not being servile and powerless. You have the power to deny Christ, and they refused manfully, boldly.
Yeah.
Right?
Out of
That
the key thing, why the early Christian movement, and you can read it clearly in the statements of Christ and Paul's letters, where they really do speak up the virtue of struggle and continuing in the faith in a weakened state, in weakness and in struggle and in oppression. Here's the key thing: Wolf is critiquing the framing of such as an end in itself, where
Yes.
we need to be as an end in its own right, weak, servile, effeminate, and pushed around, which is an absolutely common attitude today in modern Christianity, so-called. But what the scriptures say is not that weakness is good in and of itself, and we must remain weak and never take power. That is dumb when you read the rest of scripture. But also, it's unbelievably clear that such Christian statements on embracing such states is out of necessity because of these of us literally being surrounded by our enemies at the very beginning of the faith. And so if we are to continue in the faith, we must struggle, we must embrace the weakened state we have for now at least, and be willing to go to our deaths, be willing to endure punishment and oppression and persecution for that. But what did Christ also say? Make disciples of the nations. Okay, and what will happen when a whole nation is converted per that command, and a necessary component of a nation includes its government? What's going to happen, Dr. Bird? What's going to happen? Oh,
he shall reign until all of his enemies are put under his feet.
Exactly.
What does that mean?
Exactly.
What does that mean?
The struggle is the means. That's the ultimate refutation of this whole section. The struggle and the weakness in Christianity is the means to the end, not the end in itself.
Yeah, yes. I also think that we should, talk about this more, because we're coming at an age when we need to talk about the function of suffering well. Christianity in the early centuries was in a time when the social dynamics required them to be martyrs. But there's this assumption that because the first century Christians lived like that, because the books of Acts is structured like that, therefore Christians at all times and in every social context have to behave like that. That is a major, that's a completely fallacious argument. This is one of the things that, like, even Martin Luther, like the Anglican Church, the Lutherans, even the Reformed and Calvin, they reflected on the fact that different ages call for different types of involvement by Christians within civil society. Just because the apostles were beheaded doesn't mean that Calvin had to be. You know what I mean? Like, we all live in different ages, but there is coming a time, again, probably for it could be a short time, when the left really just pushes its thumb deep into the church, and we're going to have to suffer well, even to the point of martyrdom. That's totally fine. That's completely consistent with the idea that if we have opportunities to wield the sword, we should do so.
Well, and I mean, so much of it, and this comment by Sabaton 288 is correct. Much of the American Evangelical Church is built to LARP the Book of Acts. That's right. That suffering is an end unto itself, right? That's how they treat it, like CJ was saying. But you forget that, look at the Book of Acts itself, right? Look at the last chapter of the Book of Acts. Where is Paul? Paul is in Rome. And who is he preaching to? He's preaching to members of Caesar's household, right? Acts is structured in that way purposefully, showing you the end to which Paul is suffering, that the gospel would go to Rome. It would go through the entire oikumene, and that eventually the people at the very top would come to Christ and believe. And what happened? What happened? Oh, you finally got a Christian Roman emperor, and the situation changes. where
Well,
he
Paul
bows the knee to Jesus.
actually, if you look at the historical context, Paul actually taught them a sermon about the inherent virtues of justice and liberty and equality. That's what he actually taught Caesar, to tolerate the minority religions all equally.
Yeah, yeah,
Source.
yeah,
Trust me.
exactly. Like
Keep
that's
going.
that's the point. Yeah, that again, yeah. Sabaton is commented here, right? He's preaching to Caesar's household, not that they just go to heaven when they die, but that there is another king, right? That there is a king of the kings named Jesus,
Yep.
right? That's what he's preaching, and right, that's the gospel message, right? The little word evangelion. We talked about this with Ron Dodson, a month or two ago. That word, what it means, and it's the irony here too. Like where did I first get that from? Is from Bird's co-author, right? N.T. Wright, right? Wright writes a lot about this. That evangelion, right, means announcement of victory, right? Announcement or an announcement of a new king being born, an heir being born, and the kingdom being saved, right? That's what that Greek word means. Is that there's a new king. There's a new king of the world.
You're misunderstanding
That's
me
what gospel
here.
means.
Pastor Iska, you're clearly misunderstanding me here. By the Evangelion and the announcement of victory over the whole world, Christ as King means actually the tolerance of gays.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's exactly like. Then they impute like this,
Yeah.
liberal society into that, and that's what the
Yeah.
gospel actually brings.
Yeah.
And I mean, come on. No, and the point is that Christ is King, right? That's the point of the gospel, that he's King, not just of you and your little heart. You get to go to heaven when you die, right? That matters, of course. Individual salvation matters.
Yeah.
But he's saving the world, right? It's his world that he is redeeming. It's his, and he's taking it back, right? That's what it means. And so the suffering of Christians, and you see this, right? CJ is alluding to it, that you see these guys like these G3 guys, for example, that we love to make the punching bag. Right, they talk about suffering a lot, right? To their credit, right? They talk about Christian suffering, but it's in this Book of Acts LARP kind of way that's just our purpose forever, is just to always suffer until whammo, somehow then Jesus comes back and puts everything right. When instead, like there's an end to the suffering, there's a purpose to it, a telos to it, and that is Christ's reign and rule being realized on the earth, right? That's the end to which Paul is suffering. That's the end to which the early Christians suffered. And that end was accomplished. And for us today, we have to understand the same thing, that you're not just going to be ground into dust by the liberal regime for no reason, just because God wants you to, right? Just because God wants you to suffer, and that's your lot in life as a Christian, right? There's a purpose to it. And that purpose is that Christ's kingdom is expanding and growing and coming into the world, right? That's why we suffer as Christians.
Exactly.
Right? Not this ridiculous notion that you just suffer and be effeminate and weak and a punching bag and a doormat your whole life for no reason, right? No. So let's let him keep going. Otherwise, this will be a 6-hour episode.
Was to be made powerless. It was to be pierced, which had sexual connotations. Okay, the Roman.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Michael Bird's gonna do his bird things again.
Yeah, here we go, buddy.
Yep.
Man.
Always portrayed the victims of their conquest as womanish, dominated and violated by their Roman superiors. To be crucified was to be made feminine. And far from shrinking away from that notion, shying away from it, being embarrassed about it, Christians embraced the cross and all it symbolized in the Greco-Roman world. They embraced that as the locus of their identity, the source of their mission, despite all the negative connotations it had. What the Christians cherished was not power in power, it was power in weakness, greatness in civility, honor in humiliation, equality in Christ. Love conquers hate. Better to be abused than to abuse others. The very values of tolerance, justice, and equality that Wolfe despises are products of the Christian tradition that have fermented and flourished and developed into the West in their current form. We should not be despising those values, but pointing out their Christian roots. Let me add.
Yeah, this is
exact same. Oh, sorry, go on.
No
shell game. Play a shell game here.
You're the guest, Paul, so I'll let you go first.
Okay, yeah. I don't think we need to say anything additional. It's just everything we said before, that the suffering was a necessary obstacle and even a means to an end, not an end in itself. That refutes this entire section completely.
Yeah.
He's saying that Wolfe's wrong for that the Christians weren't pursuing power in power itself, which Wolfe is not claiming. But Bird here is asserting the exact opposite, that Christians seek weakness for weakness' sake, pretty much. Obviously, he's saying, "Oh, but it's for the gospel and the Jesus butter and what have you." But no, that's you're saying that you're basically saying that the earthly realization of the kingdom of God is just eternal struggle sessions. That's what you're saying, and that's not true. That's absolutely not true. That's all that needs to be said, really.
Yeah, in their conception of Christian life, it's gulag for eternity, right? That's what the Christian faces and has to just love and say, we love the gulag. We think it's great, right?
Yeah.
Take our property, Joe Biden. You want to do the unrealized capital gains tax? Tax it at 20. You should tax it at 90%, man. We love suffering.
Please, Daddy. I mean, unbeliever. Please punish me more.
Yeah, that literally, this is what they want, right? This is their view. This is godly and holy to suffer for no reason whatsoever, right? But there's a purpose to it.
The evangelical sufferer. Look at me, I'm suffering, guys. We should make that a thing.
Yeah, someone meme it right now.
One of the reasons that the Romans despised Christianity is because it was a religion of the stilty, of the foolish, of the nobodies, the weak, the lowly, the impoverished, the unmanly, those lacking status and power. The pagan philosopher Celsus, in the late 2nd century, he derided Christianity as full of foolish and lowly persons, insufferably obtuse, full of slaves, women, and children. I mean, that's what Celsus hated about Christianity. It was the religion of the losers. And
he's proving Wolf's point right here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He's proving Wolf's point that
empire.
Yeah. Where is Celsus now? Where's his Roman Empire now? Right. No.
Hang on, boys. I got Celsus on the phone. Let's actually get his opinion. Oh my God, it burns.
Yeah. It's like, but he's proving Wolf's point that this is all a cope. Right. This whole theology these guys have is a cope for their weakness and their own effeminacy. Right. And they project it onto us. Right. That we are. That we just want to be big bad boys, tough and biker gangs and all that. And it's like, no, man, we're just sick of people like you, right? That's what it is.
I think Wolf would agree with Celsus. He thinks Celsus was right. Instead of being the religion of women, slaves, and children, Christianity should be the religion of senators and gladiators. It should be masculine, mighty, and magnificent. And this is the irony. What Wolf finds so utterly appalling about modern Christianity is how much it resembles ancient Christianity, with its belief that God is on the side of the poor, the oppressed, and the disempowered. Okay.
Oh, yeah. He's really upset at how much it has to correspond with ancient Christianity. Yeah, the analogs are right there. Yeah.
Bird.
What?
Bird. This. Also Bird. Oh, you are white natives of the United States and Europe and the UK. You poor, working class, low class whites. Oh yeah, you have to submit to the elite regime.
Yeah.
Bird,
That's exactly what it is.
The entire ethos of Michael Bird represents the regime evangelicals. They were so vicious against dissenters from the COVID regime, 3 years ago, that every time someone wanted to dissent, the regime evangelicals were there to infuse all kinds of guilt structures and all kinds of things into them. So the idea
that power, right? They're aligned with power is what they
modern
are.
Christianity. The idea that modern Christianity is like, cares for the poor and all that stuff I think it's ridiculous. I think most of modern Christianity is there to echo the regime favorites, the regime priorities. I mean, like for instance, like the gay movement, like the gay agenda, all that stuff. Those are like heavy favorites of the regime, the corporations, the entertainment industry, the university system, all those things. Those are the favorites. Christians are the ones that are currently despised.
Yeah.
I don't know. This entire model is backwards.
I mean, even just like looking at like the white working class, right? And we can bring in Trump into this, right? We can bring that in. Who are the disempowered and oppressed? I mean, if you want to talk about oppressed people, right? Who are the oppressed people in America? It's the dude driving a truck. It's the dude that is that's roofing houses, that's building houses, that's working in a factory making widgets, right? And his entire community is being destroyed, being overrun by fentanyl, being overrun by illegal immigrants, invaders in his country that his government is actively facilitating. It's being It's having all of his income being stolen through inflation and heavy taxation, right? It's his family being attacked, his children being attacked by sexual degeneracy everywhere, right? These are the people that Stephen Wolfe cares about. These are the people we care about. And these are the people Michael Bird says he cares. He doesn't care about these people, right? Because they vote for Donald Trump, right? And they're xenophobic, right? All the people that power hates, right? The people that didn't want to wear masks and get vaccinated and everything else, right? All of those people, right? Regular American people who are being crushed by the regime, he doesn't care about them at all, right? And so, and when you side with the regime in this womanish, effeminate way, right, that actually amplifies the power of the regime, right? That's the point, right? In adopting these manners and mores and manner of speaking and living, you're actually siding with power in doing that, right? That's what's going on here, right? And they LARP in this way, like, oh no, we're being submissive and we are being like the early Christian church. Meanwhile, right, the rainbow flag is stomping its boots on everybody else's face, and you're on their side, right? But you can pretend that you're being just so much like the early church, right? You're the people that Stephen Wolfe despises. It's sickening. It makes me want to vomit. I'll try not to. All right, let's induce some more vomit.
Next
So
section.
that's my first critique of Wolfe's view. He critiques modern Christianity for being too much like ancient Christianity. My second critique of Wolfe comes down to this point. Wolfe is explicitly and perniciously Kinist in his account of a Christian nation.
Here we go.
Strap yourselves in, boys and girls.
Please define Kinism for us, Michael Bird.
This is the real dark element of the book, if you ask me. It really is talking about
isn't it the white element of the book?
keeping white people in charge of America and segregating and disempowering all ethnic minorities. For Wolfe, nation and ethnicity are synonyms. At least in his prescription as to what a nation should be, and that's and
No, it's not. Has he read the book? He's explicitly
denies it.
Denies that.
Yeah.
That's actually, ironically, that's actually one part I somewhat disagree with Wolfe on, the greater thing he puts towards culture over blood in defining nation. It's not a massive disagreement, but but otherwise, with Wolfe himself, that's just not true at all.
Yeah, it's not true at all. And probably where Bird is going to go with this, and we're getting it, is that he doesn't say there is no connection between ethnicity and nation. That there's no connection between blood and genetics and a nation and its culture. Right? He says there is, but it's not. He's not an essentialist. He's not saying there's a 1-to-1 correspondence between the two. And for someone like Bird, I'll let him speak for himself here in a second. But for someone like Bird, it's there is no connection whatsoever. And if you assert that, well, then you're an evil, racist, kinist, horrible, awful person.
Yep, exactly.
And it's like, okay, all right. So let's see what he says.
Ethnically homogenous group. For him, a nation is a Volk, it's a German word, to describe a like-minded and people who look alike.
CJ, does he use Volk in the book?
I can't remember if it's in the book. He's used it before.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's in the book either.
Yeah, but there's no. It's just scary because it's German.
Yeah.
That's what.
Oh no, guys, the German word. Hang on, Bird. You're pointing out a German word that sounds scary. Isn't that a bit racist?
Yeah, very scary German words.
Scary Germans.
They speak a common tongue. They have a history of exchange with each other. And for Wolfe, solidarity needs similarity, which requires the exclusion of an outgroup in order to fulfill a natural right to be different from other groups. And listen to those words. That's very important for him, that everyone has a natural right to be different to other groups.
Yeah, this is just plain old Althusius. This is just very standard. Martin Luther, Richard Hooker, all of them believed that their nation was for their people. They were the inheritors of a specific culture that was ethnically related, and they were therefore facilitators of that culture forward into their posterity, which is also blood related, not essentialist, but related.
No. Yeah. And CJ, you're kind of underselling it. This is literally everybody before this century.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And can you have a particularity? right? Can you have a particular people that live in a particular way that's a
Yeah.
little bit different than other people's? Are you allowed
Yeah.
to have that? No, everyone must be exactly the same. All 8 billion people on planet Earth have to watch Marvel movies and Netflix, eat at Taco Bell, right? No, like that's what he's arguing though, right? We all have to be exactly the same. You can have no ancestral way of life, no heritage that's brought you up over millennia and any connection to the past. No.
Yeah.
You have to be part of the global empire.
Well, here's the issue. When you hear Bird here and elsewhere speak about where he does try to say, no, it's all good to honor your ancestors and to carry on their traditions and what have you. But the issue is when you look at what he means by it, it's like, well, to what value do you put it? Like at best, it has something of like a superficial aesthetic value to him. That like, oh look, these cool aesthetics and these nice buildings and like festivals and what have you from our ancestors, that they're nice and cool things. But if an external force comes in and tries to systematically remove that, we can't resist. Otherwise, we're the racist. So
You're being xenophobic then. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. More vomit.
And he is also open to amicable and mutual alliances with other ethnic groups, but he doesn't want things like adoption, inclusion, or even acculturation of different cultures, intermingling with each other.
False.
Yeah.
Right. Like he doesn't say that at all. Anyway.
Like
right.
literally,
like
Bird. Look in his book. If you have like an ebook edition, type in for the word search ethnogenesis.
Yeah, man. And like you just look through history, right? Nations. This is what happens with nations, right? There's always an intermixture and a mingling, and then you don't have the same 70 nations that exist in the Book of Genesis, right? You have nations rising and falling, migrating, leaving places. This happens constantly throughout history, right? This is just absurd.
Wait, can you bring up Cryptic's comment? Anglo-America was replaced.
No, I'm not gonna. He's just gonna keep trolling us.
No, but it's a funny one. I was just gonna say like, oh yeah, that's right. We are of the supreme Anglo-Semitic mix. We're the new white people.
Yeah, you're our replacement. All right.
He doesn't want to rescind the citizenship of ethnic minorities, but what he wants is, and this is his words now, an amicable ethnic separation along political lines, which sounds either like segregation or the
Define ethnic in Wolf's words. What's an ethnicity?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But here's the thing. Let's give into Bird's nightmare here of that by ethnicity, Wolf has a much stronger place for blood. That ethnicity for him, obviously he does believe in the blood element for it, but in much higher place. Maybe not quite essentialist, but much higher, to the point where when he says ethnicity, yes, he does fundamentally mean people of the same blood kin. Okay, why is that wrong? Like, if there's a group of people who desire, hey, these people are my blood, they're my kin, I have a natural relation to them, I want to have our own space that's distinct from other people's spaces where we do our life, they do their. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, why can't Swedes say we want Sweden only for Swedes?
Literally, what's wrong with that?
Not Norwegians and Finns. Right, we're gonna have our own country.
People are allowed to gather. Oh, I'm sorry, CJ. Go on.
No, I've never really understood this line of thinking by people like Bird, because like I grew up. My dad was like did missionary work in Africa and stuff, and you just see over there like this really this kin orientedness that they have between the tribes and preserving the ways of their. I mean, they very much think like that. I mean, the Native Americans thought like that. When you think of all of these like third world countries, like the people in El Salvador, like Bukele talks about this all the time. Like, I don't understand why it's really scary only when Caucasian European derived people talk like this. That's the thing that blows my mind, just because in every other part of the world, the Chinese think about Chinese, what's good for the Chinese, and Indians, and then somehow when you take that type of framing and put it in the context of Anglo-America, it's just like, no, this is it. This is Nazism, and it's just ridiculous and Looney Tunes.
Yeah, it is. Like, what are nations for? Can you have them? Are they allowed to exist as distinct entities? Yep. Right. I mean, like, the argument that he's making is that if Germany and France and Great Britain threw off the yoke of the United States and said, all right, we're not going to have millions of North Africans and Middle Easterners, being rushed to our shores. We're going to repel those people. We're going to send the people back that are here. And France is only going to be for Frenchmen now.
Yeah.
Right. Is that evil? Is that wrong?
Yeah.
Are you and people like Bird would say, yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is. You can't do that. No, that's racist. It's horrible.
Yep.
Right?
It's okay if people choose to self-segregate in different conventions along the lines of whether you like Marvel or DC Comics or Star Wars or Star Trek. That's okay. That kind of segregation, that's okay. We should have separate drinking fountains for the DC fans and the Marvel fans. But if you dare want to associate with your own kindred more than others, evil.
Yeah.
Correction, only if you're white.
Yeah.
Africans, Asians do it. That's fine.
Yeah. I know it's so absurd. Let's let them be more absurd.
Settlement of some ethnic groups abroad, like sending blacks to Liberia in Africa. He's clear on one thing. He says non-Christians might be entitled to justice, peace, and safety, but they are not entitled to political equality. Now, that's not Christian. That sounds like the Islamic concept of dimity, where infidels, non-Muslims, are treated as second-class citizens.
Maybe Michael Bird could look into the early founding of America and who was allowed to hold public office in America, in every state.
All of Christendom was crypto-Islamic.
Yeah. We didn't let Jews and Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus hold public office. We didn't even let Catholics. You had to be a Protestant.
I remember the lost sermon of Martin Luther where he recited La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah.
Yeah, you are really good at that. Yeah, you must be Lebanese.
Yeah, I must be mixed.
But no, man, it's so ridiculous that all of Christendom had this, right? And now it's bad because my liberal democracy.
Well, isn't he part of the he's part of the Anglican Church, right?
Yeah,
and
so.
I mean, look at the history of the Anglican Church and the type of establishmentarian mentality that they had, not only against Romanists, or you don't even have to mention Islamists, but just other Protestantism. This is just part of our own cultural heritage. He talks about the fact that he wants to honor Christendom and Christian history. It's like there's no equality there. That was the way that pre-modern, pre-20th century people and Christians thought about civil society.
Well, in fairness to him, the one thing he's okay with, even in the book, is the history. His facts are fine as far as I've seen so far. Even here, his historical facts tend to be fine. The issue is that his interpretation on these issues of those facts is absolutely abysmal. He's honest. He's honest with the history that, well, yes, in our past in Christendom, it was oppression. And by the way, Andrew, you're always pausing on the best frames. I hate you so much. But
he just does it, man.
He's always
him.
Yeah.
Speaking of cartoonish.
But so he's honest with the history, but that's the thing. He bemoans it. He's like, well, Christian political, when Christianity mixed with politics, that was a bad thing. That many bad things happen. He's honest about that, but that's why he says he bemoans basically the whole thing.
Yeah, but you can't defend Christendom and Christian heritage and at the same time dismiss it as xenophobic.
Yeah, it's fundamental evil.
Yeah, precisely.
And then he sounds like a villain in a Marvel movie where he says,
sorry.
the Christians' posture towards the earth ought to be that it is ours, not theirs, for we are co-heirs with Christ. I mean,
yes, it's ours.
Yes,
it's not theirs. We're gonna inherit it. They aren't.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes.
You read the Bible, Michael Bird.
The old, oh my word. The citation, even just the citation of fiction, just shows how far the discourse has fallen. The old Christians, like pagans and even the Christians of the old times, citing other culturally significant fiction, they'd be like, in Homer's Iliad it is written, and in the Odyssey, and in the Aeneid, and now it's like, well, in Infinity War, Avengers.
Yeah, Jesus is gonna come. He's gonna say, "I am inevitable." Snap his finger and then win. Right. That's what's gonna happen, Michael Bird. I'll put it in terms you understand.
And that's some serious rhetoric he's got going on there. And what is more, for Wolfe, the bonds between people in his Christian nation are not creedal. He explicitly rejects that. Instead, the bonds between people.
He's right about that.
Yeah.
Yes. This is, by the way, I almost did a Twitter feed on this, but like Douglas Wilson said yesterday about, putting the creeds into the Constitution. One of the things that Stephen Wolfe talks about a lot is the two kingdoms. And we haven't gotten to, I've almost injected that into the conversation a couple of times, but Stephen Wolfe, he does rest his entire paradigm on the two kingdoms and the ability for us to have natural relations, creation norms that preceded the kingdom of grace. And I don't think Michael Bird properly understands the importance of two kingdoms theology in Stephen Wolfe's paradigm. And I think that might be messing up Michael Bird a little bit.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, maybe he thinks, and a lot of these people do, that he is a one kingdom guy where he's, post-millennial and theonomic and all of this. He might, to be fair to Michael Bird, maybe he's a little confused.
Are primarily ethnogeographic. He says the natural inclination to dwell among similar people is good and necessary. His point is that civil unity cannot be built on a spiritual unity, but rather it needs to include a common language and cultural similarity. The mere confession that Jesus is Lord can unite people of a Christian nation. But for Wolfe, it's too abstract to be the basis for a civil society.
Yeah, this is just two kingdom stuff.
Yeah, this isn't even just this is two kingdom stuff, but it's also just standard conservatism. This is Edmund Burke. This is Roger Scruton.
It's opening your eyes and looking at the world.
Yeah.
To replace Christianity with just any other religion or whatever. Like cultural, religious abstractions, you can say that they're a good and necessary part of a nation. I mean, that's the whole point of case for Christian nationalism. But they're not a sufficient condition for a nation. The nation comes prior to the Christian part, logically speaking.
Yeah. When you even see in America how many ethnic churches organize, right? You have Korean Presbyterian, PCA churches and Chinese PCA churches in the U.S. You have black churches where it's all black people and they want it that way, right? And no one says, "Oh, this is horrible, this is terrible." It's like, well, these are their people that they have similarities to. Right. Nobody says boo about those things. And that's just like ecclesiastical order, right? Civil orders the same way. Like how am I supposed to share a country with Ilhan Omar? Right. And forget like religion, right? How am I supposed to share a country where her people live completely a different way of life than my people? Right. How? Like America is not a shopping mall. No country is just an ethnic zone or an economic zone, right? Countries are ethnic zones, but no country is an economic zone, right? And that's what he's reducing everything down to, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like it's absurd. I don't get how you can like just reject reality.
Yeah.
Spiritual truth for Wolfe is superseded by love for one's own. So rather than love of God and love of neighbor, what is
in civil order? That's the reality.
Well, even then, that's a lie because yes, in terms of logical priority and the grounding of what a nation is, yes, the love of people and kin logically comes first. But his whole case of Christian nationalism, the whole project, is that it orients everybody towards supernatural goods.
Yeah,
that's the exact opposite of what Bird said. Again, the best frame you choose to pause on, far out, Andrew.
I'm not doing it on purpose.
Someone needs to make trading cards out of these.
Yeah.
Paramount for Wolfe is love of one's own people, love of one's own kind of people. Wolfe doesn't think that a spiritual unity in Christ warrants a civic and local union, as he warns cultural diversity harms civil unity. He also rejects any idea of immigration.
Aristotle said that.
Mm-hmm. Like, lived experience says that. I'm literally living the consequences of mass immigration in my area. Thankfully, the kind of people moving in aren't particularly prone to violence per se. They tend to be more docile, but it has ripped apart any sense of real cultural participation with the Anglo originals here in my area, and the place is really dirty now as well. So, yeah.
I'm from California, man. Like I don't even know what to say. Like every single, I could go on forever, but the melting pot is not doing well here. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
not only from culturally alien nations, but even from fellow white Christian nations. I mean, one of the weirdest parts of the book is where Woolf argues that during the Reformation, the reformed cities of Europe should not have received fellow Protestant refugees such as the French Huguenots or the Marian exiles from Britain because of problems of overcrowding. So he really does not believe in any immigration.
Those were real problems, man. Like, those are real problems for Geneva.
Yeah. And also he acts kerfuffled about how, I actually use that word well, about how he doesn't even believe in white immigration, as if like, yeah, it's almost like it's almost like Woolf doesn't operate on the white paradigm.
Yeah,
like
weird, huh?
Yeah, it's almost like he thinks like he does think that he does believe, I think, in like a general category, but in terms of meaningful or political ethnic organization, he's not like, oh, yo, white people.
Yeah, it's like I don't want like 10 million Russians coming to America,
exactly.
and they're I guess white, right? Does that mean I guess I'm doing Wignattery wrong if that's
exactly
if that's what's going on?
I don't want a single Irishman on my continent. They all need to be shipped out.
Well, but for real, like there's a particularity to America and American heritage and culture and way of life that gets upset if you import people that are even ethnically similar. And when there's a large influx of them, right? That is reality, right? And so like this idea that you just have to have no borders, free flowing people wherever, whenever is it's just ridiculous.
I think this is also his way of saying not only does he not want African and Latino Christians coming, he doesn't even want white Christians coming to his country. And this is a bit weird. If I can make a contrast between him.
Yeah, he's a terrible Wignat. He's terrible Wignat.
He's like the worst Kinis ever.
Yeah.
And the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. And Orban is a quasi-Christian nationalist. I think it's a little bit murky or obscure. But even Orban was happy to receive Syrian immigrants, refugees from Syria, if they were Christian. So even Orban is open up to a confessional unity with different ethnic groups. But Woolf clearly disagrees with Orban on this point. Woolf's claim is that it's natural to love the familiar rather than the foreign. So that's so true, I would say, but only for people who have never read the parable of the Good Samaritan, where it's all about loving people who are other than you, of a different ethnicity.
Yeah, the point of the parable of the Good Samaritan means that he needs to be imported into Israel and have voting rights.
Yeah, remember that lost manuscript of Matthew they recently whatever gospel the parable of the lost of the Samaritan comes in. After the story, there's actually a lost manuscript. It's been authenticated. It's actually from the pen of Matthew himself. That after it happened, the Samaritan asked the stranger, "Oh, by the way, I want to bring my entire clan over into Israel. You must accept us." And he's like, I don't know about that. You must love the stranger. And Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I say unto you, accept the foreign hordes."
That's
exactly
the point of the parable of the Good Samaritan. That's it.
And then the whole synagogue clapped.
This is this is as goofy as like when people are when like the socialists are like when they're giving up their resources for the church, and they're like, well, therefore, there has to be a collective ownership of the means of production. Like it just sounds like that. It sounds like a high school like Marxist LARP. So I don't. Yeah. These guys, and this is the other funny thing. Like you're not supposed to use Christianity as the basis of your politics, but suddenly we can use the Good Samaritan to argue for open borders. Isn't that funny how it works?
Yeah, weird how that works.
It's the weakness fetish. That's what it is. Yeah. Oh, any parts of the Bible that wants to surrender and be weak? Oh, those are nationally binding.
Yeah, those things we can do. Yeah,
of a different religious group, in fact. Or it's only true for people who've never read about the unity of the church in Antioch, where Jews and Greeks were united together by their faith in Jesus.
Was that a civil polity?
Within the context of the Roman Empire, which fell apart because it had no, homogeneity.
Yeah. Where does
the Church of Antioch was a civil polity, CJ? So that's
yeah. And if you guys haven't seen it, you do need to watch Bird's earlier debate with Stephen Wolfe. That pretty much inspired this, where Bird failed time and time again to distinguish principle versus practice.
Yeah,
pretty much everything he's saying that Wolfe wants this to happen. Wolfe wants mass ethnic segregation. Wolfe wants there to be no immigrants. He argues, no, I'm arguing about principle. In principle, these things are okay. And in his own particular instantiation, he'd argue for how the particularities should be done. He doesn't say all immigration's bad from memory. He doesn't do that. He's it's dependent. It's dependent on the polity. It's dependent on context and what have you. And likewise with multi-ethnic churches, where on earth does he oppose that in principle? It's bad to have multi-ethnic churches.
Yeah.
Where does he say that?
He doesn't. He doesn't
Never.
anywhere. No.
Never.
No. Absurd.
Yeah, I'd also add that, Moses married an Ethiopian woman, and the last time I checked, Ethiopians were black. Okay. The gospel, the Christian gospel, has always compelled people to break down ethno-racial barriers, which is why Jesus does his feeding miracle in the Gospels. He does on one side on the Jewish side, and he does another miracle on the Gentile side of the Sea of Galilee. Peter in the book of Acts, Peter dared to go into the house of a Gentile centurion and break bread with him, even though people said, Peter, how could you go into the house of a Gentile and eat with him? Now, the Apostle Paul says that the ethnic, class, and gender divisions that separate people and were tools for hierarchy and oppression, they are broken down.
Pause quickly. Context, he's an egalitarian. He believes in the human priest. This means more than you think.
So he's saying that transgenderism is okay because of Galatians 3:28. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Let's follow the strain of that logic, Michael.
Let's do it. Yeah.
By the cross, they are broken down in Christ. In the book of Acts, Paul's sermon at the Areopagus celebrated how, in the old King James language, God hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on the face of the earth. Now that verse, Acts 17:26.
Pause. And what did God do with those people? He allotted their times and boundaries of lands. Now, Bird, what in Paul's mind, when he's speaking about different peoples with distinct boundaries and lands, what is he thinking of? What is he thinking of, Bird? Is he thinking of cosmopolitan masses who happen to be organized in economic zones? Is that what he's thinking of?
Yeah. No, Paul, according to Michael Bird, Paul is telling the Athenians that they need to accept millions of people from all over the world to now have voting rights and collect welfare in Athens. Right? That's what it means.
Blood, God had made all the men on the earth. That was the go-to verse for abolitionists. That was the verse they always preached and taught, that all human beings, by common grace, are connected by one blood. The other thing I would say about Wolf's view is that no ethnic group is completely static and insulated. No one is completely immune from being shaped by other ethnic groups or by external influence. All cultures and groups are hybridizing in some way.
And where does Wolf say that doesn't happen?
Ethnogenesis.
Yeah. He talks about this, right? This is such a straw man that he's fighting. Like, he can't. Maybe he lacks the intellectual capacity to steel man Stephen Wolf's position, right? Yeah. That's the conclusion I'm reaching from this video.
Way. I mean, all of us move around the state, the nation, the world, interacting with other people, often marrying people from other countries as well. Imagine a good all-American boy, captain of the football team, joins the army, gets stationed in Germany for a while, and while he's there, he meets a nice Turkish Pentecostal girl. While he's there, they get married. He moves back to Idaho. They open a Turkish coffee house while he resettles into civilian life as a computer programmer. Their kids are a wonderful mix of Turkish American and German cultures, and they represent an amalgam of what has been brought together. Now, to that, I say, well, hallelujah, God be praised. Where I think Stephen Wolf would say, oh, hell no.
No, he wouldn't. That's a lie.
That's just slander.
Yeah, that's straight up slander. Yeah, completely.
You are slandering him, Michael Bird. Yeah. I hope you watch this and you retract what you said.
Well, but so I wonder if he's saying hallelujah to war brides now. Okay.
Yes, American occupation of Germany. That's
so true, King.
He's applying the Old Testament, CJ. Hopefully he shaved her head and cut her fingernails.
Oh man.
His basis for rejecting it is largely because he wants to retain the particulars of kin and custom. It's all about protecting the ethnic group, the race, from the impurity of followers. Now, unless you're going to live...
Yeah, that's totally what he says, man. Yeah, you got it right.
So, Stephen Wolf's been really clear on this, and I don't want to speak for him. This is a really, nuanced subject, but he is very clear on, he wouldn't get down to saying that, a specific marriage is a sin and you're living in sin, but he does talk about prudence, and he does talk about the ability for cultures to prolong themselves into the future and the dangers that can come by paying no attention to unequally yoked individuals. Yeah. So, I mean, he does talk about that all the time. There is a matter of wisdom involved in these mass confusions of different cultures for sure, but he doesn't get so individualistic like Bird wants him to, because Bird wants to pinpoint scary words like kinist on him.
Yeah. Where there's a point where, you know, it might not be prudent to marry someone that has a totally different culture, where their culture will reject you.
Mhm.
Right. Might not be good. But no, we can't inject prudence into such discussions. We have to worship at the idol of multiculturalism. Right.
In some
Marry the
kind of
minority,
fortress, moat, or dare I say, prison, or a concentration camp. You know, all of us, you know, in the world are going to be influenced by interacting with, falling in love with people of different ethnic groups, people from different cultures all around the world. You know, and I could understand if his concern was open borders and mass migration. If that was his concern, I could understand. But he's really interested in maintaining a type of ethnic and racial purity. Okay?
Here we go.
Really disturbing.
Yeah,
stuff.
here we go.
He's also got this strange psychologizing of the political left as having a suicidal need to self-abuse and disinherit itself because of white guilt. Stuff like that, he says, I think is...
It's true.
That's
true.
absolutely true. How is it?
It's 100% true. Like everything is driven by white guilt among the lib, right? That's incontrovertible, right? Come on, man. Yeah, that's 100% true. But Michael Bird doesn't believe it because he's a good little post-war consensus boy.
Verging into unhinged territory. There's no doubt that Woolf here is writing with a sense of prejudice towards foreigners and ethnic others, and he's got a strong desire to maintain the purity of his kin and wants to keep them unadulterated from contact with foreigners and foreign customs. So this is a guy who I think would be a big no to interracial marriages. Now, he's aware of the charge of ethno-narcissism, but I would go beyond that. I would say it's more like a form of white supremacy, aiming to keep white people separated from and supreme over other ethnic groups that they are in proximity to. Now, that, to my mind, is really sad. Because Woolf's Christianity, far from restraining or curing his ethnic prejudice, as it's done for so many, is turned instead into an instrument for amplifying his prejudices. And that's...
Oh, well, let's just talk about that, Dr. Bird, about ethnic prejudice. Right? Look at how white people are treated in my country, in your country. Right? Who faces the brunt of ethnic prejudice in America and Australia and the whole Anglosphere, in the West?
Who's not allowed to associate as their own kind? You're allowed to have allowed to have things like what, the NAACP and Black this, Black that, Asian America, like Asian associations, Indian associations, what have you. What even psychologically happens? That's perfect proof in itself. What psychological reaction do you have when someone simply says, let's have a white people association?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, people would freak out. Yeah.
Freak out about that. And then how do you think governments would react to that? How do you think that would happen, Bird? And speaking as a fellow Australian as well, can you do that here, Bird, without drawing the ire of media and even the government? If without any
they'll put you in jail,
violence or hatred or whatever, a bunch of white Australian boys decide to come together and say, hey, let's have an association just for white Australian men. Just in the same vein as there's Indian and Chinese associations, just that, nothing to do with hatred, prejudice, whatever buzzwords you want to do.
You can't do those things.
Just about our interests, just representing our interests. Would you accept that? No, you wouldn't. And
he
it
would.
shows in the mere fact that he thinks it's a bad thing for there to be such a thing as a white association. Wolf doesn't believe that, but let's just entertain that for a second. Say that Wolf or whoever else
he did,
did believe that, yes, we should have, well, let's be real, a white ethno state. Okay, let's say there's a state that is specifically predicated on a European, on European blood heritage. Okay, it's predicated on that. Immigration is extremely heavily regulated. No state in human history has no immigration.
They're describing the founding generation of America.
Yeah, exactly.
The 1790 Immigration Act. Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's say it's explicit, like the White Australia policy, which is literally what we were founded upon at Federation.
It was America.
Yeah, America
White
too.
Australia policy against Chinese workers. Now, why? Just think in the abstract. Why is that wrong in itself? Why is that wrong? What's wrong with that in any standard?
Yeah.
What?
I also think he's imputing like a lot of like weird distorted frameworks into Stephen Wolf because he doesn't understand what he's saying. Because I do think, and maybe I just speak for myself here, but I do think that like European culture was superior, and so I do believe that if you import the third world, you're going to turn into the third world, and there's a difference between the first world and the third world. I don't think it's genetically driven, but I do think it's culturally driven. And as human beings, we are deeper than our skin. So it's not about skin color, but it's about the very fact that we've inherited entire framework and ethos of our culture within us. And I do think that European civilization is the most superior. I also don't have a problem with like Chinese people thinking that Asian civilization is superior. Like that's like they have a right to be proud of that too. But I don't think there's anything racist or like denigrating about saying that I am proud of my heritage, and I think it's something that's particularly important to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's gosh, it was a good point. It was flip, I lost it. It was such a damn good point.
It's a family show, Paul.
I'm sorry, yeah. Sorry, that's just normal for Australia. We don't have the same.
We have different speech standards here. But no,
CJ, that's it. Magic dirt theory. That's what it is. This is magic dirt.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
You come to,
and it's so funny that he mentioned Liberia, because Liberia is the ultimate refutation of that.
Yeah, it is.
It tried to put in an American-style government with Africans. What happened? What happened, Bird?
Yeah, we won't talk about that. But it's it's sad that like this even has to be a conversation, that you have to refute these things, because it's like, okay, you can have American culture and it is what it is. It has its own heritage, its own history, its own way of life. And you're a bad person if you want to protect that, if you want to maintain that in these ways, and not have mass third world migration to your and importation of millions of people that don't share those things. And so, yeah, it's so strange to think of this, but this is how these people think, right? They think that multiculturalism is a positive good in every case, and that we should just have a global shopping mall, right? Economic zones where there's no particularity whatsoever, right? It's insane. So were you going to say something else, CJ?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. We'll keep on going. I think he's done with this point.
It's probably the saddest aspect of the book. Third, Wolfe proposes a pan-Protestant alliance to be the theological basis for his white Christian nation. Wolfe himself,
for his white Christian, now he's just slandering constantly.
Wolfe is explicitly Presbyterian. I mean, like hardcore Presbyterian. I'm talking like haggis and bagpipes and stuff. But he is open to co-belligerence with other Protestants. In some cases, even Baptists. That said, Wolfe is deeply suspicious of Baptists because of their tradition of dissent and advocacy for near absolute religious liberty, which is an anathema to him. He repudiates neo-Anabaptists for subverting the durable Christian order. Accordingly, he says Paedo-Baptists would be the most stabilizing force in a pan-Protestant political community, which for him, I think he means in his Christian nation, Presbyterians will be first among equals, and in practice, probably more equal than others. Wolfe's Christian nationalism says that the state is to direct people towards the true Christian religion. But which Christian denomination's definition of true religion gets to be hegemonic? It should be the Southern Baptist Convention, the Orthodox Presbyterian Church of America, Presbyterian Church USA. I mean, he never mentions the Greek Orthodox or Catholics, who seem to be just persona non grata.
That's right.
Because there's no like the rooted aspect of those those denominations here.
Yeah, I think this was brought up in the last stream that we did. This objection of, okay, which Christianity lead? How is that an objection? Like, which Christianity gets the lead? Wolfe says, mine, obviously, and I say, it's going to be an Anglican supremacist hegemony.
Of course,
that's not an objection. That's just a question.
Why would you in Australia?
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes sense in Australia.
Let's go back at Bird. For your precious liberal democracy, which form? That's not a univocal. Those aren't univocal.
Yes.
Concepts. You have the great saint of your tradition, Locke, who says atheists should not be tolerated in a society. Do you believe that, Bird? Yeah. He's right, by the way. But do you believe that, Bird?
Yeah. No, of course he doesn't. Yeah, modern American democracy. Yeah.
either are banned or perhaps are in theological re-education camp in his Christian America. I get the feeling that Wolfe would not want Anglicans forcing him to worship only using the 1662 Book of Common Prayer.
Yeah,
But
he's
if
probably
Anglicans were in the ascendancy, his theology of the magistrate and the state would give us no reason not to do it. Now, which is ironic because that's
I mean, we discussed this in the last one, so I think we can skip to the next part because this is
probably,
it's just silly. Yeah, if you're watching this one, Michael Bird, you can go watch the previous video.
Yeah. And yes, I would
It's been
force the
attempted.
1662.
Fourth, Wolfe does not believe in, engage with, or even acknowledge the liberal political tradition. In other words,
Oh no! Oh no! You're gonna cry.
Wolfe doesn't understand why things like Cromwell's England, Calvin's Geneva, John Knox's Scotland, or Hendrik Verwoerd's South Africa, hope I pronounced that right, why they were so quickly abandoned and now remembered with a sense of revulsion.
By who?
Yeah.
By who?
Sad. Yeah.
Yeah,
A Christian state.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
it's almost like that's the whole point of his book. He's specifically focusing on the Reformed tradition, not on the libtard tradition. Have you realized that, Bird?
Yeah, weird.
Operated or run by a symphony of magistrate and ministers of religion did not last long when it was practiced. Why? Because it sucked. It sucked because it ran over people's liberties. Also, rather than fight each other over religious differences, people preferred a state that was neutral on religious matters. A degree of religious freedom, a degree of even secularity. So rather than burn Catholics, drown Baptists, and lock up Methodists for preaching without a license, the people decided that the state should be neutral in religious affairs and consider itself incompetent to adjudicate upon religious disputes. Wolfe is allergic to
Within a Christian context.
Yeah, exactly. All these dynamics existed within a paradigm.
Yeah.
It's the essence of liberal democracy to tear down the paradigm.
They didn't say, okay, we're gonna have Baptists or we're gonna have Buddhists and atheists and Hindus. They get religious freedom here too, and you can have your Reddit flying spaghetti monster and pay. We'll have a temple to Thor and all of these things. No, it was within a Christian paradigm.
Yeah.
All of these things and it lasted for centuries.
Yeah, creating a neutral public square or neutral state apparatus. He rejects universal notions of fairness and equality for all. He sees this as a Trojan horse for creating an aggressive secularism disguised as neutrality. But in practice, he says it's going to be predatory and coercive.
It is.
I would object that need not be the case. And it normally hasn't been the case. I would point out that in the United States, most religious freedom cases.
Why does he get to say his thing need not be the case? But our thing about denominations fighting each other, why does that have to be the case?
What gives? And he even says this bull about, all these Protestant countries, they collapsed really quickly because they sucked and they didn't respect liberties. Okay, unironically, source, citation needed, please. As far as I'm reading, the Republic of Geneva, it lasted from the early 16th century to the very end of the 18th. That's good.
Yeah.
Is there some cataclysmic event I'm unaware of? I mean, maybe, but that's just the normal state of nations. How long does Bird think America has left?
Well,
for real.
No, it's Fukuyama, end of history. We're going on forever. It's turbo.
Well, I want to know how good liberal democracy was for Iraq.
Yeah.
Seriously, all the things that were done in the Middle East was done in the name of liberal democracy and equality.
Yeah.
How's it been working out for Libya?
How's that propositional nation going?
How's it going here? I mean, we're in complete downfall. Tensions all over, the racial tensions, sexual tensions. Cities are bankrupt and they can't even afford to get their cops out there, and cities are burning, and all across the United States, there's just massive upheaval and chaos. It's this is the end of liberal democracy.
Yeah, bridges are falling down, planes are falling out of the sky. It
need not be that way.
No, and it won't be much longer, God willing.
That have come before the Supreme Court usually win, whether we're talking about Hobby Lobby or the Masterpiece Cake Shop. And that was long before.
Until Joe Biden wins his second term and installs 20 more Supreme Court justices that can barely spell their own name.
Or the current conservative-dominated judiciary on the Supreme Court. Stranger still, Wolfe thinks that the First Amendment should only apply to the federal government and not to state governments.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
We're going to get into his American constitutional theory. Here we go, right, Michael Bird.
I'm an Australian for you.
Yeah.
What is the first word of the First Amendment?
Let me look that up. Congress.
Congress.
No,
So-
it's every legislature.
Yeah. Congress
is-
shall make no law.
This isn't Stephen Wolf's like weird theory. This is literally what's written in the Constitution. Is
Yeah.
the United States federal government is not, the Congress is not allowed to restrict these things. So how do you make that First Amendment consistent with the fact that almost every state during the time of the signing of the Constitution had established churches?
Yeah. How do you do that? Yeah.
Because it was a restriction on the federal government.
Yeah, because the United States federal system at the founding was a mere Christendom, right?
I
Where
don't
each state got to have their own church.
Exactly. But we don't expect Australians to know United States civic policy.
Yeah, well,
As an Australian,
well, he opened, he opened the can of worms and
Mhm.
opined on it. So normally I would be like, yeah, that's fine. But he wants to talk about our First Amendment, right? We
Yeah.
should let him have it.
Yeah. Hey, Bert,
So
let's
he
talk
thinks
about the
states
white
should be
Australia policy.
Well, yeah, he's never going to do that.
able to establish their own religion if they wanted to. Now, I found this particularly interesting because in Australia, Section 116 of the Constitution is basically a Westminster appropriation of the non-establishment clause and the free exercise clauses of the US First Amendment. But it only applies to the federal government. So in Australia, we have a thing that's like the First Amendment, and it does only apply to the federal government, but that's created all the problems we're having about religious freedom, because at the state levels, they've got all sorts of different ideas about how to ensure religious freedom, how to prevent discrimination and the like. So, only having it apply to the federal government in the Australian context has created numerous problems.
Because they're all of your states are subverted by post-war consensus.
Well, yeah, actually,
freedom and justice and equality ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually agree with him, but for the exact opposite reason. Like, that's why I genuinely think maybe they didn't foresee this, but either way, I genuinely believe it was a mistake to have the First Amendment just be a negative statement on what Congress can't do. It would have everything would have been solved if it had all else being equal, if it had an explicit, but it must be some milieu in the Christian traditions writ large on the state level.
Well, they didn't. I mean, 1787 was before 1789. Obviously, and they had no conception of that even being on the horizon 2 years down the road.
Right.
If they had, right, if the French Revolution had happened 10 years earlier, right, then that would be on their radar and they would have said these things. But the revolution that took place all throughout the Western world was not anything they were thinking of at all. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we could forgive them for that.
You're much better, trust me, I can tell you from the Australian experience, having a law that protects religious freedom from federal, state, and local government. But,
Stop
Wolf's dismissal of...
I'm an Australian too, and tolerate. Not that it's spicy, but how critical can I be of Islam?
You can be critical.
Out of the algo. Okay.
Yeah.
Religious-
be careful. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Religious freedom in Australia, speaking from experience, tolerating Islam was a massive mistake, a colossal mistake. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, we can take that where we can take that to the bank. All right.
Liberalism, and by liberalism I mean the idea that government should guarantee maximal liberty for its citizens. His rejection of that is really, again, ironic, because missional Protestantism is what really birthed the liberal tradition, with its emphasis on liberty, freedoms, and rights.
And it's not like it didn't get subverted or anything.
Yeah, that just wasn't Reformation principles. It's
no.
version of the thing. But thank you, very cool.
If you read Tom Holland's Dominion,
Wait, go ahead.
Imagine Martin Luther being on board with liberalism.
Yeah. Give me a break.
or James Simpson's book, Permanent Revolution, The Illiberal Roots of Liberalism, they all point out how the liberal political tradition, political freedoms are rooted in missional Protestantism. And that's because the people who set up these frameworks said, look, people have to be free to choose to have a relationship with Christ. So the missional Protestant tradition, let's call it evangelicalism, was always big on...
No, I mean... Yeah, this is the dumbest thing, because here's what happens. Christianity provided for a certain type of freedom within the context and paradigm of a Christian metaphysic.
Yes.
Right? These freedoms they were very unique to Christendom. When you eliminate Christendom as the hegemonic religion and you pursue this secularism, what's going to happen is the freedoms are going to decline with it. You have a distortion of liberty and freedom. And that's the thing that Michael Bird is praising here, but you can't have the fruit of something if you cut the tree down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's for him, he criticizes the idea of nations being fundamentally grounded in people and place and cultural homogeneity. But he seems to think that abstractions are sufficient to ground a nation.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Piece of paper will do it.
religious liberty, because every soul should have the freedom to bind itself to Christ and be saved.
Yeah.
So we should affirm liberty of conscience in religious matters, and with some element of scriptural
He
backing.
literally
Paul said, where the
denies
Spirit
it.
of the Lord is,
Sorry, pause for a
there is
sec.
freedom.
He does.
No one should be cursed in religious matters. Paul told the Galatians, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. Wolf completely
That's not a civil. I mean,
Yeah,
that's referring to one's relationship with Christ and their connection to the Jewish world. It has nothing to do with civil society.
Wolf explicitly denies that the state can bind the conscience.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
his whole flipping point.
Exactly.
His thing
Yeah.
of a Christian nationalist nation, it's so darn simple. It is establishing the
Yeah.
Christian dominance over the state and the culture, and yes, and in principle, at least for Wolf, regulating external religious practice, whether there's some toleration or virtually no toleration, either way. But let's just say hypothetically, banning expressions of foreign religions is not the same as forcing conversions.
Yeah.
That's not the same at all. You can
Yeah.
tell people, okay, if you don't want to believe in Christ or go to church, okay, whatever. But you can't open a mosque. Those are compatible propositions.
Yeah. You want to do that? Go back to where they have those.
Go back to your country, mate.
dismisses the liberal tradition, and it's a liberal tradition that was created out of missional Protestantism. That's what he doesn't seem to understand. Fifth, Christian nationalism of Wolf's variety leads to a shallow and cultural Christianity. You know what Bonhoeffer called cheap discipleship. Wolf thinks that Christian nationalism makes Christianity.
Saint. Yes.
Yeah, the great Christian saint, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Yes, who denied. Talk about superficial Christianity.
Plausible because it socializes people into religious practices in which one hears the gospel and sets the social conditions that aid the reception of the gospel and people coming to faith. To a degree, I think that might be true, but there's the problem that people receive just enough Christianity to be inoculated against it. They see Christian values, ethics, beliefs, authority imposed upon them, and that makes them, I think, increasingly resistant to real and authentic Christianity. It becomes a culture of conformity that leads to a superficial and shallow Christianity, which I think.
Would you say that about the Christian household, Michael Bird?
Yeah.
Right. Should children be raised as atheists until they turn 18? Is that what you're saying?
True. No, true. He's a crypto Baptist. And you know what's funny? We have a demonstrable empirical refutation of everything he says here. Stephen Wolf is trying to basically bring back what was the norm for 1,300, 400 years since not really Constantine, but Theodosius. That was the norm of state-enforced Christianity to an extent, cultural Christianity, if you will. Did everyone become mere superficial Christians for over a millennium for that whole time? No, it didn't. Your heritage, Bird, literally the greatest artifacts of our heritage, literary, architectural, cultural, intellectual, philosophical, you name it, all came from that period of Christian cultural, political hegemony, and yes, cultural Christianity. Yes. And guess what? It produced many real Christians. Are there cultural Christians in there as well who aren't true? Yeah, and so what? Their mere existence isn't a bad thing. The important thing is that those conditions nonetheless fostered legitimate Christianity and Christian development. Why do you think there is such birth? Think about it this way. Why do you think there is such a desire in modern Christians today, including yourself by the looks of it, in wanting to go with resourcement of older Christianity, Reformation, church fathers, and what have you? Why is that? What was the conditions in which they were in which they produced these classics?
Yeah, exactly.
In both cases, whether it's imposed or superficial, people are more likely to reject Christianity for those reasons. I mean, from my experience, some of the worst atheists I've met are the products of, Catholic schools where they've got just enough religion and basically to be allergic to it. Expectations of mandatory religious conformity are not going to facilitate the free decision to commit one's life to Christ. Quite the reverse. It's going to turn people off it. It's also possible to argue the opposite of what Wolf says should happen. James Madison wrote that that disestablishment of the church in Virginia was the greatest thing that ever happened to religion there. Piety, religious devotion.
Yeah, he's Madison's definitely an authority on this wonderful Christian man. Like this guy was horrible. Right.
Oh yeah, let in disestablishment of Christianity, bring in the big gay. But hey, liberty, guys,
Yeah.
liberty. That's
Liberty.
our chief.
Increase as a direct result. It made the clergy sharper, more active, less lazy and indolent. That observation is bolstered by the sociologist Roger Finke and Rodney Stark, who showed that church involvement actually grew stronger in the United States as de-establishment progressed. See their book, The Churching of America. And I have to say, I think Wolf doesn't understand why people celebrate the decline of cultural Christianity in America. But, as I've explained, I think cultural Christianity leads to a shallow and superficial faith. It's a recipe for creating hypocrites, legalists, and atheists. Further, the de-establishment of religion from the state has proven to heighten the depth and the breadth of religious devotion when it's done voluntarily. And I also should note something else about Wolf's book. As far as I can tell, there's only one mention of evangelism in the entire book, which means his Christian nation is not achieved by proclamation, but by the power of imposition.
It's not the point.
I'm so tired of that critique. I mean, it's a political theology book.
Brain dead.
He also didn't get into justification. Is that not important?
I guess he doesn't believe in it.
Or
He must be an evil federal.
So it's not about evangelism. It comes down to power. It's not about persuasion. It's not about come see and taste that the Lord is good. It's more like the Lord is good. And if you don't say he is, then the Lord's going to get some vengeance on you through us. I mean, that's not a recipe for a good country. Sixth, the explicit Americanness of the book is nauseating. Hey, look, I love America. America saved our butts in World War II. I love Chick-fil-A. I've got so many American friends. I do a lot of speaking and writing for America.
We should have let the Japanese take over Australia. Could have just done it.
Honestly, we'd probably be in a better state. Let's be real.
Yeah, just let them take over.
This one's hilarious because Americanness, as he describes it here, is basically post-war America that Stephen Wolfe just at its very root despises. So
yeah. And it's even more absurd because Wolfe in his book is very explicitly written for the American context. Yeah.
He's writing to Americans.
Book written for America.
Yeah.
Oh no, guys! By the way, guys, this abominable book about the history of the Roman Republic has a lot of Romanness in it. Oh, the horror!
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Americans, I love it. But Wolf says stuff that just kind of irk me. He says things like, the American flag implicitly symbolizes the Christian flag. Here I'll say, read my lips. No, it does not. Such remarks would be completely incomprehensible, I think, to Calvin, Beezer, Cranmer, Edwards, Whitfield, almost any reformed person prior to 1776, maybe even after too. America is not an elect nation. America is not in the Bible, not even in the book of Revelation. America is...
He's not arguing that anywhere. He's not saying that. Come on, man.
Not the custodian or best version of global or historical Christianity. I mean, I love you people, but don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought. And here I would riff off a little bit of Nicholas Walterstorff. He said, the church is not only American and does not include all Americans, so the church is not American, and America is not the church.
Amen.
Now, I'm not...
Thank you for that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Stunning and brave. Stunning and brave.
We had no idea. Thank you for educating us.
Thank you for
enlightening. I pontificate too much about American history. Not my monkey, not my circus. I know a little bit, but not a lot. But from what I can tell about American history, the attempts to turn America into a Puritan heaven ended up making it Protestant hell, which is why many colonists like Roger Williams of Rhode Island and Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, that's why they argued for the separation of church and state, because it was good for the state and it was better for the churches and for the...
We should have sent Roger Williams back. That's the mistake.
They're not bringing their best, folks.
And religious freedom of all the people there. Seventh, Wolfe argues for the right to revolution, especially when it comes to religion. He's big on this. He likes his right to revolution. Now, me, I do believe that Christians can be called to civil and uncivil disobedience. But the Christian tradition has always been very wary, very allergic to the notion of regicide, killing the king or the president. In my reading of the history of political theology, one passage that comes up a lot is 1 Samuel 24, where it was noted that David refused to kill Saul even when he had the chance to do so. And even John Calvin said it was very sanguine at this point. Calvin said, if you are stuck with a slothful or wicked monarch or prince, pray hard and hope for the best. That was pretty much his advice. It's not really until you get to the English Revolution or the English Civil War and then the American War of Independence and the American Civil War that Protestant interpreters have to start thinking of a workaround Romans 13 and Paul's call for Christians to obey civil authority. Now, William Wolfe, I think he does believe that Christians should obey governing...
William Wolfe now. We're bringing in William Wolfe.
Authority. But he does think that there's a point where you have to throw off the shackles of tyranny. Wolfe, to his credit, he recognizes that Christian rulers will have true power, and then resisting them would be resisting God. And he argues that even non-Christian rulers at the moment have been put in place by God and deserve a certain degree of respect. Be that as it may, it's alarming that Wolfe believes revolution is permitted when the government acts in ways detrimental to true religion or when it attacks true religion. It really depends on what you mean by detrimental, don't you? Sure, banning public worship or banning the preaching.
I wonder if Michael Bird thinks that a woman who is being beaten by her husband should just go on submitting to him.
Exactly.
Right? Does he think that?
Exactly.
Right? Do you think that might? That's the only conclusion I could reach from what you were saying here. So
And
you'll have to clear that up for me.
Pastor Andrew, that example is especially pertinent because that was a big controversy. At least, well, in fairness, he's in Melbourne, but in Sydney Anglicanism, that was a big controversy in like a few years ago of new policies and reports around domestic violence in our archdiocese and what have you, families in there. And that was a massive kerfuffle. Like people basically of Dr. Bird's ilk, like the egalitarians basically, were all arguing, no, how dare you guys not allow for divorce in this and that because of domestic violence or what have you. It absolutely should be permitted. Get women away from them. Don't make them submit to their husbands because that's evil big bag patriarchy. I'm almost certain Bird would be on that same boat. And hey, fantastic. We agree. A woman should not be subjected to forced to live in the home of a man who is actively killing her, basically. We all agree with that. But with his logic here, he is promoting state level domestic violence. Let's just be straight up. That's literally what it is: domestic violence, the state against its own people.
If the state can abuse you, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Of the gospel would be detrimental. Though I don't know whether it would automatically send me into a flight of revolutionary rage, but I'd like to try other option versus. I mean, does the government holding or sponsoring or allowing gay pride parades, does that qualify as being detrimental to true religion?
Yes.
Not my thing.
Yes, it
but again, it doesn't fill me with revolutionary zeal because I believe citizens in a liberal democracy have to have the freedom to be other than me. They've got to be willing to follow their own conscience. Wolf is very critical of what he calls regime evangelicals. People who ingratiate themselves to progressive governments by telling them what they want to hear. His own view is that each domain of life, every aspect of private, personal, civic, and political life is under God's ordained system of order. And anything that is not that, he regards as a form of tyranny. And Wolf goes so far as to say that pretty much the entire American regime, from Hollywood to health officials to HR departments, for him, that's one big anti-Christian regime. And he says the regime is the tyrant. Though at this stage, he's...
Amen.
Fact check true.
Beautiful.
Fact checked by true American Christian patriots. True.
Fact checked by PolitiFact. True.
Seems more interested in resistance than revolution. Finally, we're coming to the end of our summary and critique of the book. The book ends with a really ranty epilogue. I mean, super ranty epilogue about restoring America to its religious principles. It's a denouncement of the optimism of the Reaganite and Bush modes of conservatism. It sees the institutions of America as having been secretly taken over by secular subversives and turned into a gynocracy, ruled by soft, effeminate men and their women.
Correct.
Wolf believes that the antidote is not persuasion to a better ideal, to a better nation, but a purge of the whole order itself. And I think he envisages Trump as merely an instrument for doing that. What is more, for Wolf, Putin is kind of a morality tale because he thinks secular progressives would do to Christian nationalists what they are currently doing to Russia, spreading misinformation, punishing it with sanctions and all sorts of other punitive actions. And Wolf complains that Christian nationalists are perceived as the Taliban of the West, and they are.
You just accused us of being Taliban.
You literally just said that, man.
You said that, bro.
In the beginning, I know he's cutting different, like he taped this in different segments. You said this. You said this, Michael Bird.
Wolf is a prophet.
Yeah, that's funny.
Liberalism, and they are perceived as authoritarianism. To which I would say, well, yeah, because you kind of are, and you're sort of like proud. So in their regards as a type of Taliban, a type of threat to their liberal democracy and their rights and their beliefs. But I've read the book. You kind of are. What Wolf wants, in his own words, is a masculine society because it harmonizes the individual and
a society that is governed by men because that's what God built.
Well, here's the even
men
better
to be
framing.
men.
Here's the even better framing to really attack him on his own terms. We believe in a society of true masculinity, but we also have a higher view of femininity than him.
Yes,
much higher. True masculinity and true femininity is what makes a good society.
Yeah. You can't have one without the other, and he wants neither.
Yeah.
That's what guys
isn't he the one that was going around like objectifying women in yoga pants?
What?
There was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, right. That was Michael Bird. He was talking about how much he appreciated that.
He loves their yoga pants. Yeah, wear the yoga pants, baby. Oh yeah.
What a creep.
Hierarchy for the common good. To which I would reply, the common good for who? For men and by men to have godlike power over women, which never ends well for women.
For men, by men, to have, quote, godlike power over women. Paul, is it as it is written, Ephesians 5, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's derivative divine authority of the husband over the wife. So, yeah.
That's just like
I don't make the
cultural,
rules, man.
man. That's just cultural, man. That's like that's Paul's first century, misogyny, dude.
That's Paul, not Jesus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's go with that.
Wolf likes the cross, but only when it's painted on a Roman shield or on a Tomahawk cruise missile. It doesn't dawn on him that the necessity.
Michael Bird, you like the rainbow flag when it's painted on a Tomahawk cruise missile. Right.
You and correction, he likes the cross, and I like the cross when it's painted on an AR-15. Let's be accurate here, okay?
You're not allowed to have those. Sorry.
To be in charge. It doesn't occur to most Christians in most of the world for most of history. I mean, Christians in India don't say this country belongs to us and these Hindus have stolen it. That's not how the book. That's not how the story goes. For Christians in other parts of the world, they've got a different way of relating to their culture, to their political landscape. But
it will go that way. Give it time.
Yeah.
Right. Christians will conquer India.
Trust
right? There will be Indian Christians, and it's theirs. Right. The whole subcontinent, it belongs to them.
True.
Right. Period. End of story. Right. Sorry. What was when Thomas went there? What was he telling them? Jesus is king over this whole place. Right.
Yeah.
And people believed him. Right. There's still Christians descended from the people that Thomas preached to.
Idea, he wants people to be weaned off a sense of compassion and equality. Again, it reminds me of something Hitler said. I want people capable of violence.
Oh my goodness.
Literally Hitler.
Oh, Hortler hours. Here we
Hortler,
go.
guys.
Here we go.
It's relentless and cruel. I mean, that's a quote. Now, again, let me be very clear. Wolf is not a Nazi, but that type of.
Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you. He's not a.
What's the law again? The law where like a discourse goes long enough and Hitler will be brought up.
Godwin's law, and we've
Yeah.
reached Godwin's law points in this podcast.
Rhetoric, be weaned off compassion and gird up your loins to be able to do what must be done to take power. That is sinister. That is some real deep, sinister stuff. And then he's got some other weird bits as well. Buy a homestead, boys should get blue-collar jobs, men should lift weights, make more babies, and other things that have, quite frankly, nothing to do with the New Testament or Christian ethics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Weird.
Yeah, they should. Right.
Yeah.
Michael Bird wants you to be fat and weak. That's what this means. Be fat and weak and effeminate.
And have no
In
children.
your
Nothing
cozy
to pray for.
cosmopolitan.
No
studio
children.
apartment.
Live in the pod. Eat the bugs. Right. That's Michael Bird's vision of Christianity.
Live in the pod, eat the bugs, read the Gospel Coalition. That's his utopia.
.au. Yeah.
Listen to Taylor
.au,
Swift.
If I do give a final summative verdict about the book, it would be this. It's more like a Christianized version of Nietzsche than the religion of the crucified Nazarene. I could sum up the book with a gloss of one of Nietzsche's famous quotes. I would sum up Stephen Wolf's Christian nationalism this way. Man shall be trained for religious war, and the woman for the recreation of the cultural warrior. All else is folly. That, in a nutshell, is what Stephen Wolf's The Case for Christian Nationalism is about, and I've tried to list out why I think it's a really bad idea. So in your theological disputes, in your chatting with friends, in your discussions about church-state relationships, I just want you to know this is a bad idea for America, for global Christianity as well. There are much better ways of how churches and Christians can relate to the state by this constant need to think that they must be in power by any means necessary, because it leads you up a dark road. And at the end of it, you won't find the risen and exalted Christ reigning. You'll find out, I think, you've in fact made a Faustian pact with the devil himself. So that's why I'm not a big fan of Christian nationalism. And there, my friends, endeth the lesson.
All right. Thank you, Michael Bird. Thank you.
Were you guys? Was it as beautiful as I hyped it up to be?
Yeah.
Some good
Yeah.
content.
It was excellent. I mean, I think my summary of it is, if you want to look and be like Michael Bird, subscribe to his version of Christianity. All right. If you want to be a guy like him, if you want to exalt the yoga pants, there you have it. Go ahead and do it, man. Like, I mean, really, it just is. I mean, we've talked about it. We're probably belaboring the point, but he's a regime evangelical, right? Every single thing that he believes is mediated through what Christians are allowed to say and believe and do, right? That's 100% it. I mean, it's cope for the existing political and social order, and he thinks it's good. He thinks it's fine. right? I mean, he said multiple times that none of these bad things are happening, right? No.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm gonna shill Stephen's book even 10 times harder now.
Yeah. And
Everyone go buy it if you haven't.
And everyone knows that, everyone here at least knows that famous quote, but if you don't, you burn it in your head. The purpose of a system is what it does.
Yeah.
Burn it in your head, that's exactly that. But if you minus out system, that can be applied to basically anything. In this case, people should really look, when you're looking at Bird and other public theologians like him, you should think the purpose of a public theologian is what he does.
Precisely.
What is Bird doing in all of his argumentation, in all of what he is saying against Christian nationalism, against, well, straight up poo-pooing the idea of men striving for fitness, health, babies, their own land and property? In all that he's saying in this video and elsewhere, what does that lead to? And that's his purpose. That's all you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any closing words, CJ?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where he's invested in nations not being Christian. He needs that. He needs the liberalism. It's what gives him. I mean, it's what funds him. I mean, it's what sustains him. The regime evangelicals cannot critique the very system that keeps money floating to them. You know, he needs him for his book publishing, his op-eds, his commentary, his entire
sinecure
structure on the health of the regime.
Yeah. It's the Mark Twain quote, right? You can't get a man to figure out something if his paycheck revolves around him not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Sure. That's it. I mean, the purpose of a public theologian in the regime is to do what it does. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, if you want a Christianity that is constantly suffering and being weak and effeminate and has no purpose for any of it, then that's his. Go after it, man. So that's all we got for this one. Paul, is there anything you want to promote? Any articles or anything before we sign off?
Nothing in particular. Of course, I've still got my book on how to read the Church Fathers. That's still being written. That's a little bit of a way off still. My channel, the other Paul. Any particular articles in that? No, not really. I do intend to possibly, I had an idea knocking in my head of an article about what is a nation, what grounds a nation, and in particular refuting ideas like basically people like Bird and others who try to get rid of a blood element from the definition of a nation. And my kind of way I want to frame it is to go with, okay, let's explore that. What are the different ways in which a nation can be a nation with excluding blood? And the problem that you find with each one of them is that they fit another category. So case in point, if a nation's not united by blood, but it's united by propositions, well, what is it? It's an association, it's a club, it's a society, it's a social society, it's a political club, it's a religion, perhaps even. But those are not the same as a nation. That's not what a nation is. There are nations which everyone recognizes are nations, and yet they're not necessarily creedally united. And then going through all those categories and basically concluding that, yes, blood is a real, however much you place in it, blood is a real element of a nation.
That'll be spicy. How about you, CJ? I know you had a great interview this morning that you want to direct people to.
Yeah, I mean, the Chronicles Magazine podcast, look for it on YouTube. But I talked to Jeremy Carl, and he talked about the unprotected class. You know, speaking of speaking out for those who can't speak for themselves, I would go read Jeremy Carl's book because he does speak out for those. And that specific class that he's referring to is white Americans. And Jeremy Carl is a very level-headed. He's not some edgelord. He's a very, good scholar, and he produced a very good book and has well-reasoned and well-backed up arguments. And so I would really understand who the broken and forgotten people of American society and the West are. If you want to take that aspect of Michael Bird's, call to you to look out for those that are not being looked out for, I would go read Jeremy Carl's book. It's a good start. Yeah,
absolutely. Maybe we'll get to have him on in the near future as he's promoting the book. Yeah, I think we'll have him on the next week or two, actually. Yeah. And we might even drop a little bit of our conversation with Martyr Maid and Ron Dodson. There's a segment that we'll maybe make available. But if you want to watch the whole thing, go to contramundumpodcast.com and subscribe. We don't have a comfy sinecure like Michael Bird does to be able to spout a regime-approved theology. So if you want to support the show, one, go on YouTube and click subscribe. That's always helpful. And then go to contramundumpodcast.com and sign up there. And we appreciate all of it. We have more guests coming up, right, CJ? More special guests.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to get that scheduled. We'll email you all about that episode as well. But that is, really all we have for today. So thank you all for watching. That we're going almost 2 hours today. A very special episode. And we appreciate you all for watching. We're very thankful for all the support you guys give us. And until next time, stay peacefully dangerous, and we will see you next time.